We had a power plant client in Louisiana, and they had an interesting failure of one of their generator step-up transformers. The generator step-up transformer was in normal operation and had an electrical fault. The utility had purchased a spare multi-purpose transformer just in the event that something like this might happen. This particular spare had a load tap changer. So the voltage of the transformer could be adjusted to the size of the generator depending on which plant they were going to use this generator step-up transformer in. The features that made it a little bit more usable for all of the sites cost more. It added somewhere, a little more than 10% to the cost of the transformer, but it gave them that flexibility that they didn't have to have a $4 or $5 million transformer for 4 different locations. They could have $20 million worth of transformers were replaced by this one $4.5 million transformer. So it was a good strategy, and it was paying off. Well, we were there after the loss and kind of looking at how they were going to get the spare installed, and the insurance company's adjuster was there, the independent third-party adjuster. They had an engineer, electrical engineer. We were all looking at different things. The risk manager for the utility for our client was there, and I overheard the insurance company engineer tell our client that they were not going to pay for a multi-purpose spare to replace the one that we're now taking out of its spare service and putting it into live service. He said that they were only going to pay the cost to replace what failed, the one that didn't have that flexibility. And when I heard that, I stepped in, and he didn't know the policy, and he shouldn't know the policy. So that was fine. That was his perspective. So then I went over to the adjuster and made sure he understood where his engineer was, so that the three of us, the four of us now with the risk manager, were on the same page. Then I reminded the adjuster that there was a clause in the policy for additional cost and expense. It's sort of a extra expense cover in a property policy that we had. And we had $1 million sublimit for it. So I told the adjuster we would apply that. Basically, all the expenses necessary to get back up and running to near normal as possible as soon as we could. Well, that was, running with that spare. And then there's no reason we had to leave that spare in. 8 to 12 months later, when the new manufactured replacement that they pay for gets delivered, then we want to take our spare back out. So that would incur more of these costs to move it, about $500,000 each time you move it in and out. So the adjuster did the math real fast and realized that an extra $1 million worth of in and out costs wasn't worth the extra 10% of the $4 million transformer cost. So he quickly agreed that, yeah, there would be no problem replacing the spare with the multi-purpose load tap changer. And our client got what he needed. Same day, the client asked me to take a look at the firewall between the transformers. This replacement spare was going to be a lot larger than the transformer that was coming out. And their engineers were questioning the need to rebuild the firewall. Now, it can cost $1 million to put a firewall in, and even doing work on a firewall in a substation around other live transformers, it's a tough job. So they asked me to take a look at it. And from a risk standpoint, we looked and said, okay, if the small transformer catches on fire, it had basically an auxiliary transformer for the site, which was smaller, much smaller than the generator step-up transformer. Generator step-up transformer over here, it's providing the power that's leaving the plant. The auxiliary transformer is providing the power that goes back into the plant for the lights and the controls and the pumps for the water and the in-house loads. So with this firewall between them, what we had basically was a fire on the small transformer. We didn't want to affect this large transformer. Well, It really wouldn't, because the firewall was already big enough for the other large transformer that was there. And then the question is really, this newer, larger transformer, is it going to affect the transformer over here? Well, if you look at that, well, then you're saying, are we worried about a $4 million transformer burning up a $500,000 transformer? And you really, you're not going to spend $1 million for this firewall to avoid one day maybe involving this $500,000 in the $4 million loss. So it just doesn't make sense to do that. And we saved them probably $250,000 at least in just extending the wall up higher. That was one of their alternatives. So in one day, saved the company nearly $1 million.